December 3, 2019, at exactly 6:47 p.m., a call came into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The voice on the other end was shaking. "I think," the caller said, "I think I just saw Emmanuel Cafferty, the boy who disappeared 23 years ago." The agents went silent. Emmanuel Cafferty had been missing since 1996. He was 5 years old when he vanished. And now someone claimed they'd found him, alive. This is the story of one of the most perplexing missing child cases in American history. A case that spans over 2 decades, crosses multiple state lines, and involves a discovery so shocking that it would challenge everything investigators thought they knew about child abduction cases. What happened to Emmanuel Cafferty? And could a young man living under a completely different identity really be the missing boy that a family never stopped searching for? Before we dive deeper into this investigation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here at True Crime Vault, we unlock the cases that deserve to be remembered. New investigations every week. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next in this story. Our story begins on a warm summer evening in Austin, Texas. July 18, 1996. Emmanuel Cafferty was 5 years old, with bright brown eyes and a gap-toothed smile that his mother, Patricia Cafferty, said could light up any room. He was wearing a red Power Rangers t-shirt, denim shorts, and white sneakers with Velcro straps. These details would be seared into his mother's memory forever. Patricia Cafferty was a single mother, working 2 jobs to support Emmanuel and his older sister, 7-year-old Maya. On that particular evening, Patricia was working the closing shift at a local diner while her mother, Emmanuel's grandmother, watched the children at their modest apartment on the east side of Austin. According to the police report filed at 8:32 p.m., Patricia's mother, 63-year-old Dorothy Hayes, had dozed off on the couch while the children played in the small courtyard outside their ground-floor apartment. The apartment complex, Riverside Gardens, was a low-income housing development with about 40 units. The courtyard was a shared space where children often played under the watchful eyes of parents and neighbors. It was considered safe. It was familiar. Dorothy Hayes had let Emmanuel and Maya play there countless times before. When she woke up at approximately 8:15 p.m., Maya was sitting on the steps drawing with chalk. Emmanuel was gone. Dorothy searched the courtyard frantically. She knocked on neighbors' doors. She called Patricia at work. By 8:30 p.m., they'd searched every apartment in their building, every common area, every nearby street. Emmanuel had simply vanished. A 5-year-old boy, in a courtyard surrounded by apartments, had disappeared without a single witness seeing him leave. No one heard anything unusual. No one saw a struggle. No one saw a vehicle. He was just there one moment and gone the next. The Austin Police Department responded immediately. According to the initial investigation report, officers arrived on scene within 7 minutes of the 911 call. They established a perimeter around the apartment complex and began interviewing every resident. They brought in K9 units. The dogs picked up Emmanuel's scent in the courtyard, tracked it to the parking lot, and then lost it completely. This suggested that Emmanuel had been taken by vehicle. But whose vehicle? And how had no one seen anything? Within 24 hours, the case was escalated. The FBI was called in under the Federal Kidnapping Act. Emmanuel's face was everywhere, on news broadcasts, on missing children posters, on the side of milk cartons. The image that circulated showed a smiling little boy with close-cropped black hair, wearing that red Power Rangers shirt. Patricia Cafferty made tearful appeals on local news stations, begging anyone who had information to come forward. The family offered a reward that grew from $500 to $5,000, funded by community donations. Tips poured in from across Texas and neighboring states. Investigators pursued hundreds of leads. A man matching the description of a registered sex offender had been seen in the area earlier that day, but he had an alibi that checked out. A suspicious white van had been reported near the complex around the time Emmanuel disappeared, but despite extensive searches, the vehicle was never located. Witnesses came forward claiming they'd seen a woman with a young boy matching Emmanuel's description at a gas station 40 miles away. But the lead went nowhere. Every promising tip seemed to dissolve into nothing. The investigation revealed something disturbing about Riverside Gardens. The apartment complex had minimal security, no cameras, no controlled access. Anyone could walk in from the street. In the weeks following Emmanuel's disappearance, investigators discovered that 2 other children had been approached by strangers in that same courtyard over the previous 6 months. Parents had reported these incidents to the apartment management, but no police reports had been filed. Could Emmanuel's abduction have been prevented? As weeks turned into months, the case began to grow cold. By the end of 1996, active leads had dried up. The FBI continued to work the case, but resources were diverted to newer investigations. Patricia Cafferty refused to give up. She became a vocal advocate for missing children, working with organizations to improve reporting systems and community awareness. She never moved from that apartment, telling reporters in a 1998 interview, "If Emmanuel comes home, this is where he'll look for me." Every July 18th, she held a vigil in that courtyard, with candles and photographs, keeping her son's memory alive. The years passed. Emmanuel would have turned 10 in 2001, 15 in 2006, 20 in 2011. Age progression photos were created by forensic artists, showing what Emmanuel might look like as he grew older. These images were distributed periodically, generating brief surges of attention before fading back into the background of America's thousands of missing children cases. Patricia never stopped hoping. Maya, Emmanuel's sister, became a social worker specializing in helping families of missing persons. The wound never healed. And then, 23 years after that summer evening in Austin, everything changed. December 3, 2019. A woman named Jennifer Holbrook was working her shift as a medical assistant at a clinic in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was processing intake paperwork for a new patient when something caught her eye. The patient was a young man, 28 years old, who gave his name as Marcus Webb. But as Jennifer looked at his face, something nagged at her. She couldn't place it at first, and then it hit her. She'd seen that face before. Not in person, on a poster, years ago. One of those missing children posters that had been everywhere in the late 90s. Jennifer finished processing the patient professionally, betraying none of her suspicions. But as soon as her shift ended, she went home and started searching online. She found archived news articles about Emmanuel Cafferty. She found the age progression photos. And she found what she was looking for, a detailed description of a distinguishing mark. Emmanuel had a small, crescent-shaped birthmark on the back of his left shoulder. Jennifer had seen that exact birthmark when Marcus Webb had changed into a patient gown. The next morning, Jennifer called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She was nervous, worried she might be wasting their time, worried she might be wrong, but she had to report what she'd seen. The case manager who took her call asked careful questions. What exactly had she observed? How certain was she? Could she provide any documentation? Jennifer explained that she couldn't share patient records due to HIPAA privacy laws, but she could confirm what she'd seen. The case manager thanked her and said they would follow up. Within hours, the tip had been forwarded to the FBI's Albuquerque field office. Special Agent Lisa Martinez was assigned to investigate. Martinez had been with the FBI for 12 years and had worked several cold cases involving missing children. She knew that tips like this came in regularly, and most led nowhere. Hope and wishful thinking could make people see connections that weren't really there. But this tip had specific details: the birthmark, the age, the physical resemblance. It was worth pursuing. Agent Martinez began by pulling everything she could find on Marcus Webb. He had a New Mexico driver's license issued in 2009, social security number, employment records showing he'd worked various jobs, mostly in construction and warehouse work. He had no criminal record. On paper, Marcus Webb appeared to be exactly who he claimed to be, a man who'd lived a quiet, unremarkable life in New Mexico. But Agent Martinez knew that identities could be fabricated. She needed to dig deeper. The investigation revealed something interesting. Marcus Webb's documentation only went back to 2009. Before that year, there was nothing. No school records, no medical records, no employment history. It was as if Marcus Webb hadn't existed before the age of 18. This was a red flag. Agent Martinez had seen this pattern before in cases of hidden children who'd been abducted and raised under false identities. On December 10, 2019, Agent Martinez and her team made the decision to approach Marcus Webb directly. They located him at his apartment in a working-class neighborhood of Albuquerque. When they knocked on his door that evening, Marcus answered, looking confused but not alarmed. Agent Martinez identified herself and explained that they needed to speak with him about a sensitive matter. Could they come inside? Marcus agreed, still looking puzzled. What happened in that apartment over the next 2 hours would become crucial to understanding this entire case. Agent Martinez began by asking Marcus about his background. Where was he born? Where did he grow up? Who were his parents? Marcus answered readily. He said he'd been born in Las Cruces, New Mexico in 1991. His parents were Robert and Diane Webb. They'd moved around a lot when he was young because his father worked in construction. He had hazy memories of his childhood, nothing very specific, but that wasn't unusual, right? Agent Martinez asked if he had any documentation from his childhood. Birth certificate? School photos? Medical records? Marcus shook his head. He said there'd been a house fire when he was 17. Most of their family documents had been destroyed. His parents had gotten him new copies of his essential documents when he turned 18. His birth certificate, social security card, that kind of thing. Then, tragically, his parents had died in a car accident in 2010, just a year after he'd gotten his license. He'd been on his own ever since. The story was plausible, but Agent Martinez had been doing this long enough to recognize when something felt off. She asked Marcus if he'd be willing to provide a DNA sample for comparison to a missing person case. She didn't mention Emmanuel Cafferty by name yet. She watched his reaction carefully. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but agreed. He said he didn't understand what this was about, but he had nothing to hide. If his DNA could help solve a case, he was willing to help. The DNA sample was collected and rushed to the FBI laboratory for analysis. Agent Martinez also subpoenaed records related to Robert and Diane Webb. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, death certificates, property records, the car accident report from 2010. She needed to verify every detail of the story Marcus had told her, and what she found made her blood run cold. Robert and Diane Webb were real people. They had lived in Las Cruces. They had died in a car accident in 2010. But according to their death certificates and the accident report, they were childless. No son was listed as next of kin. No son had claimed their bodies or their estate. In fact, a distant cousin had handled their final arrangements. If Marcus Webb was their son, why hadn't he been involved in any of that? Agent Martinez dug deeper into the house fire Marcus had mentioned. She contacted fire departments in every city where the Webb family had supposedly lived. No record of a residential fire at any address associated with Robert or Diane Webb. No insurance claims. Nothing. The story was starting to unravel. On December 18, 2019, the DNA results came back. Agent Martinez read the report 3 times, making sure she understood what she was seeing. The DNA sample from Marcus Webb was a familial match to Patricia Cafferty and Maya Cafferty. Not a perfect match, but close enough to indicate a biological relationship. Marcus Webb was related to the Cafferty family. The probability was overwhelming. Marcus Webb was Emmanuel Cafferty. But how could this be? How had a 5-year-old boy, abducted from Austin, Texas, ended up living as Marcus Webb in New Mexico? Who had taken him? And what had happened to him over those 23 years? Agent Martinez knew she needed to approach this carefully. If Marcus truly didn't remember being Emmanuel, revealing this information could be traumatic. She consulted with FBI psychologists and social workers who specialized in recovered missing children cases. They developed a plan for breaking the news to Marcus and simultaneously to the Cafferty family. This would be the most delicate part of the entire investigation. On December 20, 2019, Agent Martinez returned to Marcus Webb's apartment. This time, she brought a child psychologist with her. Marcus let them in, looking more worried now. Agent Martinez sat down across from him and told him that they had some information that was going to be very difficult to hear. She explained that his DNA had been compared to that of a family in Texas. The results showed that he was not Marcus Webb. His real name was Emmanuel Cafferty. He had been abducted when he was 5 years old. Marcus stared at her. His expression went from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like panic. He shook his head. That couldn't be right. He was Marcus Webb. He remembered his childhood, his parents, his life. Agent Martinez gently explained that false memories could be created, especially in young children. If someone had taken him as a 5-year-old and raised him as their own son, telling him he was Marcus Webb, he might have come to believe that was the truth. The mind protects itself in strange ways. The next several hours were a blur. Marcus, or Emmanuel, couldn't process what he was being told. He kept insisting there had to be a mistake. The psychologist worked with him, helping him understand that this was real, that there were people who had been searching for him for over 2 decades, that he had a mother and a sister who never gave up hope. Did he have any memories from before he was 5? Anything at all? Marcus struggled to think. There were fragments. A woman's voice singing, a courtyard with chalk drawings, a red shirt. But were these real memories, or just things he was imagining now that the suggestion had been planted? Meanwhile, in Austin, Texas, Patricia Cafferty received a phone call that she'd been waiting 23 years to get. Agent Martinez told her that they believed they'd found Emmanuel. He was alive. He was in New Mexico. Patricia collapsed. Maya had to take the phone. The agent explained that the situation was complicated. Emmanuel didn't remember his real identity. He'd been living as someone else. DNA testing had confirmed that he was their family member. They could arrange a meeting, but they needed to proceed slowly. This would be an adjustment for everyone. Patricia and Maya flew to Albuquerque the next day. The FBI arranged for them to meet with Marcus in a neutral location, a private room at the FBI field office with psychologists present. When Patricia walked into that room and saw the young man sitting there, she knew. Despite 23 years, despite him being a grown man instead of a 5-year-old boy, she knew. She could see Emmanuel in his face. She could see that birthmark on his shoulder that he'd been born with. She started to cry. Marcus looked at this woman who claimed to be his mother. He studied her face, and somewhere deep in his mind, something stirred, a feeling more than a memory, a sense of something familiar. Maya showed him photos from their childhood, pictures of him as a baby, as a toddler, as a 4-year-old, playing in that courtyard, holding Maya's hand. There was one photo in particular that made Marcus go very still. It showed a little boy in a red Power Ranger shirt, smiling at the camera. Maya said softly, "That was your favorite shirt. You wore it constantly." Marcus touched the photo. "I remember," he whispered. "I remember this shirt." Over the following weeks, as Marcus underwent therapy to help him process these revelations, more memories began to surface. Fragmented, unclear, but definitely there. He remembered the courtyard. He remembered Maya. He remembered a woman, his grandmother, who used to make him sandwiches with the crusts cut off. These weren't the memories of Marcus Webb. These were Emmanuel's memories, buried deep, starting to resurface. But this left the biggest question unanswered. Who had taken Emmanuel? Who were Robert and Diane Webb, really? And why had they stolen a child? The investigation into Robert and Diane Webb's true identities became the FBI's top priority. Agent Martinez worked with a team of specialists to trace their backgrounds. What they discovered was disturbing. Robert and Diane Webb had indeed existed, but they weren't who they appeared to be. Further investigation revealed that Robert Webb's real name was Robert Crenshaw, and he had a criminal record dating back to the 1980s. Theft, fraud, identity theft. He'd been arrested multiple times, but had served minimal jail time. Diane Webb's real name was Diane Porter, and she had a history of mental health issues and had been in and out of psychiatric facilities. According to records that investigators were able to piece together, Robert and Diane had met in the mid-1990s. They'd both been living on the margins of society, drifting from place to place. In 1996, they were living in San Antonio, Texas, just over an hour's drive from Austin. And here's where the case took its darkest turn. Diane had been pregnant in early 1996. Medical records from a free clinic in San Antonio showed that she'd been receiving prenatal care. But there was no record of her ever giving birth at any hospital in the area. No birth certificate for a baby born to Diane Porter in 1996. Investigators theorized what had happened. Diane had either miscarried or the baby had been stillborn. She'd been devastated. Robert, wanting to make her happy, had decided to get her a child. And he'd found one in Austin. Emmanuel Cafferty. A little boy playing in a courtyard, easy to access, momentarily unsupervised. Robert had taken him. Just walked into that courtyard, told Emmanuel that his grandmother had sent him to get him, led him to a car, and drove away. It would have taken less than 2 minutes. They'd taken Emmanuel to San Antonio, then quickly left Texas altogether. They'd moved to New Mexico, settling in various small towns where it was easy to slip under the radar. They'd told Emmanuel he was their son, Marcus. They'd told him that he'd always been Marcus. At 5 years old, Emmanuel's memories of his real family would have been fragile, easily overwritten by new experiences and repeated insistence that he was someone else. Children are adaptable. Children want to trust the adults taking care of them. Over time, Emmanuel became Marcus. Robert and Diane had been careful. They'd homeschooled Marcus, avoiding the scrutiny of school registration. They'd moved frequently, never staying in one place long enough for neighbors to ask too many questions. When Marcus was old enough to need official documents, they'd used Robert's skills in identity theft to create a false paper trail. They'd found a real child who died in infancy in the 1990s, a boy who would have been about Marcus's age, and they'd used that child's information to get Marcus a birth certificate and social security number. By the time Marcus was 18 and Robert and Diane died in that accident, he had no reason to question who he was. But why had Diane and Robert never been caught? The investigation into Emmanuel's disappearance in 1996 had been extensive. How had two people with criminal records managed to evade detection? Agent Martinez believed it came down to a few factors. First, in 1996, databases weren't as interconnected as they are now. A child taken from Texas and hidden in New Mexico could slip through the cracks. Second, Robert and Diane had changed their identities too, living as the Webbs. Third, they'd kept a low profile, avoiding situations that might bring law enforcement attention. And perhaps most tragically, no one had been specifically looking for Emmanuel in New Mexico. The initial investigation had focused on Texas and surrounding states. By the time the search expanded, the trail was already cold. In January 2020, the FBI held a press conference to announce that Emmanuel Cafferty had been found alive. The news made national headlines. The grainy footage of 5-year-old Emmanuel from those old missing children posters was shown side by side with recent photos of Marcus Webb. The resemblance was striking. Patricia Cafferty appeared at the press conference holding Maya's hand and told the assembled reporters that she'd never stopped believing her son was alive. She'd never given up hope. And now, finally, Emmanuel was coming home. But the reunion was complex. Marcus, while accepting that he was Emmanuel biologically, struggled with his identity. He'd lived as Marcus Webb for over 2 decades. Those were his memories, his experiences, his life. Emmanuel Cafferty was a stranger to him. He had no real memories of Patricia as his mother, no connection to the family that claimed him. Therapy helped, but it couldn't erase 23 years of living as someone else. Patricia was patient. She told reporters in a February 2020 interview that she understood Emmanuel needed time. He might always see himself as Marcus. What mattered was that he was alive, that he was safe, that they had a chance to build a relationship now, even if it wasn't the relationship they would have had if he'd never been taken. Maya, too, worked to connect with her brother. She shared stories from their childhood, trying to help him remember who he'd been. Some days were better than others. The legal aftermath was complicated. Robert and Diane Webb, or Crenshaw and Porter, were deceased, so there was no one to prosecute for Emmanuel's abduction. The case was officially closed as solved, but there would be no trial, no justice in the traditional sense. Patricia Cafferty told the FBI she didn't need justice. She just needed her son back. DNA testing definitively confirmed that Marcus Webb was Emmanuel Cafferty. The match to Patricia and Maya was irrefutable. In March 2020, Marcus legally changed his name to Emmanuel Marcus Cafferty, acknowledging both identities. He said in a statement released through the FBI that he was trying to honor the life he'd lived while reconnecting with the life that had been stolen from him. The case raised questions about how many other missing children might be out there, living under false identities, not knowing who they really are. The FBI estimated that there are hundreds of cold missing children cases where the child might still be alive but living as someone else. Emmanuel's case showed that it was possible to find them, even decades later. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children launched a renewed initiative to review cold cases with fresh eyes, using modern DNA technology and facial recognition software. For Patricia Cafferty, the years of waiting were finally over. She told reporters that she would never get back the time she'd lost with Emmanuel. She'd missed his first day of school, his first baseball game, his graduation, his 20s. Those moments were gone forever, but she had today. She had the chance to know her son as an adult. She had the chance to be part of his life going forward. That was more than she'd had for 23 years. Emmanuel, for his part, was slowly adjusting to his new reality. He moved to Austin to be closer to Patricia and Maya. He started a job working with an organization that helped missing children, wanting to turn his experience into something positive. He gave interviews, hoping that his story might help other families. He said that discovering his true identity had been the hardest thing he'd ever gone through, but it had also given him answers to questions he hadn't even known he had. Why didn't he have more childhood photos? Why were his memories so hazy? Why had he always felt like something didn't quite fit? Now he knew. In July 2020, on what would have been the 24th anniversary of his abduction, Emmanuel returned to that courtyard at Riverside Gardens in Austin. Patricia and Maya went with him. The apartment complex looked different now. It had been renovated, updated, but the courtyard was still there. Emmanuel stood in the place where he'd last played as a 5-year-old boy. He didn't remember that specific day. He didn't remember being taken, but standing there, surrounded by his mother and sister, he felt something like peace. He'd been lost. Now he was found. The case of Emmanuel Cafferty stands as a testament to the fact that missing children investigations are never truly closed. Families like Patricia's who refuse to give up hope, investigators who continue to work cold cases, and ordinary citizens like Jennifer Holbrook who trust their instincts and make that call. All of these elements came together to bring Emmanuel home. It took 23 years. It took the evolution of DNA technology. It took one medical assistant noticing a birthmark and remembering a poster from her childhood. But it happened. Today, Emmanuel Marcus Cafferty is 33 years old. He has a relationship with his mother and sister, though he admits it's still complicated. He's undergoing ongoing therapy to process his trauma and his identity. He's slowly recovering more memories of his early childhood, though some things may be lost forever. He's chosen to speak publicly about his experience, hoping to give hope to other families of missing children. He wants them to know that finding a missing child, even decades later, is possible. Patricia Cafferty says that she lights a candle in that courtyard every July 18th, not in mourning anymore, but in gratitude. Her son came home. Not every family gets that ending. She knows how lucky she is. She's devoted her life to advocating for missing children, and now she does that work with Emmanuel by her side. They've turned their tragedy into purpose. The question that haunts this case is how many other children are out there, living under false identities, not knowing their real names or their real families. How many parents are still waiting, still hoping, still searching? Emmanuel's case proved that even after 2 decades, recovery is possible. It proved that tips matter, that investigating cold cases matters, that never giving up matters. If this case intrigued you, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault for more in-depth investigations. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Have you heard of other cases of missing children found years later? Let me know in the comments section. And remember, these aren't just stories. These are real people, real lives, and real mysteries that deserve to be remembered. Emmanuel Cafferty's story is one of loss, but it's also one of hope. Hope that even when all seems lost, sometimes the missing can be found.